You paid extra for an orthopedic mattress, but no doctor, no science, no one actually approved it. I hate to break this to you, but you might have just made the wrongest purchase ever. You didn't buy a better mattress, you bought a better story printed on the tag. And here is why. The mattress you slept on last night was almost certainly sold to you on a claim with zero scientific backing. Not debated, not partially proven. Directly examined by sleep researchers and found to be, in its most common commercial form, essentially made up. The word is orthopedic, and in most countries, including the United States, it means absolutely nothing. No regulatory definition, no testing requirement, no certification body. Any manufacturer can stamp it on any mattress at any price, and no authority will stop them. The word carries no legal weight and no scientific obligation whatsoever. But that is almost not the interesting part. The interesting part is what the actual research says is happening to your spine while you sleep, and how dramatically it diverges from everything the mattress industry has spent decades telling you. Because there is a real mechanism. Spinal loading during sleep is a genuine and documented phenomenon. Intervertebral disc pressure changes across the night in ways that are measurable and meaningful. Sleep position interacts with spinal geometry in ways that produce real consequences for real people. The science exists. It is just not the science that sells premium mattresses at $3,000 a unit. What you are about to hear is what the research actually shows about your spine, about your discs, about the mattress claims that have been directing purchasing decisions for an entire industry built on a single word that nobody ever defined. If you have back pain that is worse in the morning than it was when you went to bed, stay with me. Because the explanation is in the biology, and the biology points somewhere the bed companies would very much prefer you not to look. Here is how the mattress industry constructed its narrative and why it was so effective for so long. The logic seems intuitive on the surface. Your spine has a natural curve. A mattress should support that curve. A firmer mattress provides more support. Therefore, a firmer mattress is better for your spine. This chain of reasoning is not entirely wrong at every link. Spinal support during sleep is a real consideration. The natural curvature of the spine is real. Where the logic breaks down, where marketing diverged from mechanism, is in the assumption that firmness is the primary variable that determines spinal outcomes during sleep, and that more of it is generally better. The research does not support this. A landmark study published in The Lancet, one of the most respected medical journals in the world, followed over 300 patients with chronic nonspecific low back pain and assigned them randomly to either a firm mattress or a medium firm mattress. The results directly contradicted the industry's central premise. Participants sleeping on medium firm mattresses reported significantly less pain, less disability, and less sleep disturbance than those on firm mattresses. The firm mattress group, the group that the orthopedic labeling was implicitly promising the most spinal protection, did measurably worse. This study was published in 2003. It received attention in the academic literature. And then the mattress industry largely continued marketing firm and extra firm mattresses as the clinically responsible choice, because the alternative, acknowledging that decades of orthopedic marketing had been directing consumers toward a product that the research suggested was inferior for the very condition it claimed to address, was commercially untenable. That is not a conspiracy. It is an industry responding to financial incentives. But the consequence for consumers has been real and ongoing. Purchasing decisions made on the basis of a regulatory vacuum, anchored to a claim that the science does not support for a product they will spend a third of their life in contact with. The mattress industry did not bury this research in a dramatic sense. It simply continued operating as though it did not exist, which for most consumers produces the same outcome. Let's go into what is actually happening to your spine during sleep, because the mechanism is genuinely interesting and almost completely absent from any conversation the mattress industry wants to have with you. The spine is not a rigid column. It is a dynamic structure, 24 vertebrae separated by intervertebral discs, each disc a fibrocartilaginous structure with a gel-like nucleus surrounded by tough outer rings of fibrous tissue. These discs function as shock absorbers during waking activity, distributing compressive load across the spinal column. But they do something else that most people are completely unaware of. They breathe. Not literally, but functionally. During waking hours, when the spine is loaded, when you are standing, sitting, walking, carrying weight, the compressive force squeezes fluid out of the discs. They thin slightly across the day. This is why most people are measurably shorter in the evening than they were in the morning, by as much as half an inch to an inch over the course of a day, as disc fluid is gradually expressed under load. During sleep, when the spine is unloaded, the discs rehydrate. Fluid is drawn back in through a process called imbibition. The discs plump. The spine returns toward its morning dimensions. This nightly rehydration cycle is not cosmetic. It is the primary mechanism by which disc health is maintained over a lifetime. The nutrients that sustain disc tissue, which has almost no direct blood supply in adulthood and depends on fluid diffusion for nourishment, are carried into the disc during this overnight rehydration phase. Compromising it night after night over years and decades has consequences that accumulate silently and express themselves as the degenerative disc changes that imaging studies find in the majority of adults over 40. And here is where the mattress question becomes more than a comfort issue. The rate and completeness of disc rehydration during sleep depends on the mechanical environment the spine is held in during those hours. A sleeping surface that creates sustained pressure points, that loads specific spinal segments unevenly, that fails to allow the natural lumbar curve to decompress, is not merely uncomfortable. It is interfering with the nightly biological process on which disc health depends. The disc that cannot fully rehydrate overnight begins its next day in a slightly more compressed, slightly less resilient state. Repeated across years, this deficit accumulates. Research from the Spine Research Institute at Ohio State University and other groups studying spinal biomechanics during sleep has documented that sleep position interacts with mattress properties to determine actual spinal alignment, and that misalignment during sleep creates sustained muscular tension, uneven disc loading, and morning pain patterns that most people attribute to aging rather than to the 8 hours they just spent on a poorly matched sleeping surface. The morning stiffness that many people accept as an inevitable feature of getting older is, in a significant number of cases, the direct output of a spine that spent the night in low-grade mechanical stress rather than genuine recovery. Sleep physician Dr. Michael Bruce has made this point in clinical practice for over 2 decades. The pillow is a bed for your head, and its primary function is to keep the nose in line with the sternum, to maintain the cervical spine in neutral alignment through the night. Deviation from that alignment in either direction creates a sustained stretch or compression on one side of the cervical musculature and the cervical discs. Not acutely painful, not dramatic, but sustained across 6, 7, 8 hours and repeated every night, the cumulative loading becomes clinically significant. The same principle that applies to the cervical spine applies to the lumbar spine, the thoracic spine, and the sacroiliac joint. The geometry of the sleeping position, maintained for a third of every day, is one of the most sustained mechanical inputs the musculoskeletal system receives. And almost nobody is optimizing it because the mattress industry would rather sell you a label than a mechanism. If this is landing, if you recognize the morning stiffness, the back that takes an hour to feel functional, the neck that carries yesterday's sleep into today, stay with me. Because the self-assessment here is specific, and it points toward interventions that cost almost nothing. Here's how to determine whether your spine is being mechanically compromised during sleep and what the pattern looks like from the inside. The first and most diagnostic signal is morning pain that improves with movement. Pain that is present upon waking and diminishes within 30 to 60 minutes of being upright and mobile is a strong indicator of sleep position-related spinal loading rather than structural pathology. Structural problems, disc herniations, facet joint arthritis, stenosis, tend to produce pain that is at least as present during activity as at rest, or that worsens with specific movements. Pain that is worst at the moment of waking and dissolves with movement is the spine decompressing and rehydrating after a night of compromised positioning. The body is correcting in the first hour of the day what the sleeping surface failed to prevent across the previous 8 hours. The second signal is location specificity, low back pain that concentrates in the lumbar region upon waking, particularly with a sensation of stiffness rather than sharp pain, correlates strongly with lumbar spine loading during sleep, most commonly from a mattress that is either too firm, creating pressure points at the hips and shoulders that force the lumbar spine into extension, or too soft, allowing the hips to sink into a hammock-like curve that loads the lumbar discs asymmetrically. Neck stiffness that is lateralized, worse on one side, with a feeling of the neck being held at a slight angle, is almost always pillow geometry rather than structural pathology. The third signal is sleep position drift. If you begin sleep in one position and consistently find yourself in a dramatically different position by morning, if you start on your back and wake curled on your side, or start on your side and wake face down, your body is moving away from discomfort. The unconscious repositioning is a pain avoidance behavior driven by accumulating mechanical stress in the original position. Most people interpret this as restless sleeping. It is frequently the spine seeking relief from a surface that is not adequately supporting it. The fourth signal is the hotel test. If you sleep in a hotel on a different mattress and wake with noticeably less stiffness or with more stiffness than on your home mattress, you have just run an inadvertent controlled experiment. Your body is the measuring instrument. The variable that changed was the surface. The result is data. If someone you know has been waking every morning with back stiffness and attributing it to age, to stress, to the way they slept, Send this to them. Because the mechanism is specific and the assessment is something they can do tonight. It costs nothing to understand what your body is telling you in the first hour of every morning. So what do you actually do? And the answer here is more precise than either the mattress industry or most wellness content will tell you, because precision is the thing that actually produces results. The primary intervention is sleep position, not mattress firmness. And this is where the research is clearest and the application is most immediately accessible. Side sleeping is the position occupied by approximately 75% of adults, and it is, from a spinal geometry standpoint, the position with both the most potential and the most common errors. The goal in side sleeping is a straight spine from the base of the skull to the tailbone, no lateral flexion, no rotation, no sagging at the hips. The two most common failure modes are shoulder collapse, where the lower shoulder is pressed into the mattress and the upper spine rotates, and hip drop, where the hips sink lower than the shoulders and the lumbar spine curves laterally. Both create sustained mechanical loading across the night that expresses as morning stiffness. The correction for shoulder collapse is a mattress with sufficient pressure relief at the shoulder, one that allows the shoulder to sink in rather than creating a rigid pressure point that the spine then curves around. This is the primary reason the Lancet study found medium firm superior to firm. The medium firm surface allowed shoulder accommodation without excessive hip sinking, producing better overall spinal alignment for side sleepers than the rigid firm surface that forced lateral curvature. The correction for hip drop is a pillow between the knees, not a thick pillow, not a bolster. A medium thickness pillow between the knees that keeps the hips in a stacked, level position through the night. This single intervention, which costs $8 to $15 and can be implemented tonight, neutralizes the most common cause of sleep-related lumbar loading in side sleepers. Research on patients with chronic low back pain who implemented knee pillow use during side sleeping showed significant reductions in morning pain scores. Not because the mattress changed, not because anything structural changed, because the spinal geometry during sleep changed. For back sleepers, the remaining 20% of the adult population, the primary failure mode is lumbar hyperextension, where the natural lumbar curve is exaggerated by a sleeping surface that does not support the lower back, or by a surface so firm that the lumbar region bridges between the contact points at the upper back and the hips without support. A small pillow or rolled towel placed under the knees reduces lumbar extension significantly by flattening the lumbar curve toward neutral. Again, this costs almost nothing and can be done tonight. For stomach sleepers, the 5%, the biomechanical problem is more fundamental. Prone sleeping requires the neck to rotate to one side for breathing, creating a sustained cervical rotation that loads the facet joints and discs of the cervical spine across the entire sleep period. It also places the lumbar spine in extension. Stomach sleeping is the one position where the evidence is clearest that position itself is the primary problem, largely independent of mattress properties. The intervention is not a better mattress. It is transition away from prone sleeping, gradually using a body pillow placed along one side of the body to make rolling to the prone position less automatic. On the pillow question, which Dr. Bruce has addressed in clinical practice with thousands of patients, the principle is neutral cervical alignment, meaning the nose is in line with the center of the chest, neither tipped toward the ceiling nor dropped toward the floor. For side sleepers, this requires a pillow thick enough to fill the space between the ear and the mattress without tilting the head. For back sleepers, it requires a thinner pillow that supports the natural cervical curve without pushing the head into forward flexion. The specific pillow matters less than the principle. Whatever keeps the cervical spine in neutral alignment for your body geometry and your sleeping position is the correct pillow. You can assess this in 30 seconds by lying in your sleeping position and having someone observe whether your nose is level with your sternum. If it is not, the pillow height is wrong. And on mattress selection, stripped of the orthopedic marketing language that means nothing, the research suggests medium firm is the starting point for most adults, with the recognition that body weight, sleeping position, and individual anatomy all influence what medium firm actually means in practice. A heavier person needs more resistance to avoid hip sinking. A lighter person on the same mattress may find it too firm for adequate shoulder accommodation. The honest answer the research supports is that there is no universally optimal firmness. There is only the firmness that produces neutral spinal alignment for your specific body in your specific sleeping position, which means that the 30-second position check, the knee pillow trial, and the hotel test are more diagnostically useful than any label a manufacturer prints on a mattress. You can keep buying mattresses based on a word that nobody has ever legally defined, waking every morning with a back that takes an hour to come online, attributing the stiffness to age or stress while the actual mechanism runs unaddressed every single night. Or you can put a pillow between your knees tonight. Check your cervical alignment before you turn the light off. Note what your first 30 minutes feels like tomorrow morning compared to this morning. The spine does not care what the label says, it responds to geometry. And the geometry is something you can change tonight for the cost of a pillow and 30 seconds of attention. Next on this channel, the silent sleep disorder that is mechanically destroying spinal recovery, deep sleep, and cognitive function simultaneously in 1 in 7 people, most of whom have been told their symptoms are stress, aging, or anxiety. The actual cause is structural, and it has a name most people have heard but almost nobody has had properly explained. If the mattress industry has been selling you language instead of science and nobody has ever shown you what the research actually says, this channel is for you. Subscribe, we go deeper every week.